and I looked, and behold, the heavens were opened, a ninth season.
We believe in the Trinity. We believe in the five solas. We believe in the doctrines of grace.
Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Matthew 4:4.
A lot of the time, people are asking the wrong questions. They're not asking the questions like, do I understand God's grace? Do I understand the cross?
Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Colossians 3:16.
Every single one of us has our own ministry. Doesn't matter if you work as a CEO or you work at McDonald's or whatever you do, or whether you're quote unquote in ministry, you have a ministry.
As we mature, we walk, we enjoy our relationship with God in as much as we see his majesty in the blessings that we have, just by what Yeshua has done for us, not by what we have done to impress God and then get something from him.
So faith, so salvation by faith.
Absolutely. Salvation by faith. I keep zeroing in on these, the big ideas, like what is biblical love? What is grace? Do I have an accurate understanding of God's grace? Our love for Yeshua, but his love, like through us, is why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why it's called Messiah Matters.
It is Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. This is Messiah Matters number 389. I will attempt to not use the word heretic today. My name is Caleb Haig.
And I will attempt to not use the word perturbed or skosh. I'm Rob.
For our wives. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's all about our wives. They're the weaker vessel.
Pulling
So
it out right at the beginning.
That.
Ever since my family had COVID, which was quite a while, 8 months ago, we've been getting some coughs that come back often, and right now my voice is showing the strain of COVID from 8 months ago. Sounds like I'm a bass. It's okay, I'll take it.
It's lovid.
Yeah, exactly. Slovid.
Very lovid.
Yes, very low. Anyway, how's it going, man?
It's going well.
You seem like you're in a good mood.
I'm in a good mood. It's either that or cry, Caleb.
Fair.
Yeah, it's just crazy. The world is crazy.
I agree with that.
I don't know what would I do without faith. I mean, like, there's nowhere in the world to be rooted and grounded in anything. Now, here's the thing. That's always true, right? From the beginning, relationship with God is it's not like right now civilization is going wacko, right? Independent from like
ever since the
flood, right? I mean, yeah. And so, but it's just, sometimes it feels more intense, I guess. And so in our political climate, I'm talking in the United States, I can't speak for our friends in other countries and the different kinds of governments and political stresses. And of course, even in places where there's war and brutal violence every day. I mean, that's a real sobering, check in terms of, the kind of things going on in the United States. But anyway, it's like, come Yeshua, Maranatha.
Did you see that thing about the 50 Catholics that just got slaughtered in Nigeria?
Oh, I think
in
I
the
heard
Catholic
about
Church
that.
on Pentecost. Here's the thing, man, is that, I've been a part of a good amount of churches in my life. There is not one church that I've ever been a part of where a gunman could make it 2 feet inside the front door without becoming Swiss cheese. I mean, even the congregation we're at right now, nobody open carries, but that's not even true. Some people open carry, but the point is like everybody's packing. The grandmother next to you is packing. There's probably 250 guns in the building out of 300 people. Half the kids probably have guns. I mean, the point is, and everybody's responsible about it. But the idea of a gunman walking into that sanctuary and making it, killing 50 people.
Yeah,
man, it's shocking.
Yeah, taking guns away from law-abiding citizens doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, hey, look, let's get to some more uplifting things. We got Carl Matthias in the chat room today. Welcome, brother. Carl has utilized our message machine, and he did so by calling 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. We haven't heard that song in a while. Should we play that? Why not, right? Let's play it. Here we go.
Messiah Matters wants to hear from you. Leave us a comment, a question or two. Call 253-465-3205.
That's right. That's exactly what Carl did. But right before he called that number, you know what he did? He actually emailed chegg@torahresource.com. It's CHEGG@torahresource.com. This is not a joke, actually. Carl in the chat room, who, by the way, and we got some, thank you, Carl, for the voice message. We're going to listen to it in a little while. We're not going to listen to it right now. We're going to listen to it down the road a little bit. But Carl gave a lot of good background to himself in his voicemail. And so I feel a little bit like I know something about Carl, which is always nice when we listen to our voice messages. And Carl is he went to seminary, completed 2 years of a MDiv. He was a Baptist pastor, and now he is literally sitting in his patrol car. He is a police officer in South Carolina. And so we hope that you stay safe during your shift. And welcome to the chat room, and thank you very much for contacting us. And you too, everyone else, you too can contact us by calling our number or shooting us an email, chegg@torahresource.com. You can also find all sorts of wonderful resources on torahresource.com. That's a place where you can find free resources, all sorts of free resources, and you can also pay for resources as well. If you want to give us some money to help support Torah Resource and this show, you can do so at torahresource.com. By the way, that reminds me.
Yeah, no one's going to tell you no. No one's going to stop you.
Yeah, no one's going to say no. Before I forget, though, we will have a new producer credit for those who do want to help support this show. Once our new producer credit is up, which it should be done by next week, once it's up, you can find it by going to torahresource.com, hovering over store, and then going down to other materials. On that page, you will find the Messiah Matters producer credit, executive producer credit, and if you want your name to roll up on the screen in the beginning of our show, if you would like a special mug, and if you would like even to possibly have something read on air, then go ahead and get yourself a producer credit. It really does help us, actually. I mean, a lot of the equipment that we use has been paid for through our producers, and that's one of the reasons we're able to do the show the way we do it. So we really appreciate all y'all. And finally, Carl called back a second time to our hotline, and he asked a question about where to find archived shows. You can find audio of our archived shows on messiahmatters.com. messiahmatters.com, that's basically all that site is. That's going to change at some point, but we don't know when. It'll all be housed at torahresource.com. But for right now, messiahmatters.com is where you're going to find it. And if you want to see video of the shows, if you don't want to just listen to them, we go all the way back to show, I believe, 200 on YouTube. Now, why did we take down the shows before show 200? Well, there was a little bit of a format change. It was very subtle, but we changed format and we stopped being, as my good friend Ben so lovingly called us, the heresy hunters. And so we stopped being the heresy hunters. We stopped naming names, and we just became Messiah Matters. Before that,
I think at episode 400, we're going to go back to heresy hunters.
Yes, exactly. Now, we might do that today a little bit, actually, because of our good
Caleb,
friend
I'm
Carl.
loving the voice, man.
Oh,
Not
thank you,
gonna
man.
lie.
Yeah, the deep. I could be on an acapella. I could do bass.
You could be
on acapella.
introducing 70s progressive rock right now.
Oh yeah. All right. Let's also say this. This is the most important thing that we can say so far. Please click the subscribe button if you have not already. We really appreciate it. Okay, that's all. Now, let's jump right in. I think Messiah Matters Mugs looks like the CDC logo this round. It does. That is exactly what it is supposed to look like.
Nice.
So our graphic artist, let's get it in some light. Our graphic artist, Mike, who is probably in the chat room, he takes logos from other companies and then he turns them into our logos. And so this one is.
We need a Starbucks one. Ooh. Okay, Mr. G.
All right,
you're on it.
Go for it, Gonzalez.
Mr. G in the TX.
All right. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to.
Mr. Gonzalez in Texas.
Ah, yes, it's right.
It's code language, Caleb. Sorry.
I'm not down with the.
It's like if I said, "Look out for 666," like you're gonna, you got to know what I'm talking about, man. You can't.
Wow.
Can't explain everything.
Do you guys know who Apologia Studios is? Yes,
I've never heard of them.
Yeah, Durbin, Mr. Durbin, and James.
We had Durbin. We lived across the street from the Durbins when I grew
up. Oh, really?
Up.
But not the Jeff Durbins.
I really don't know.
I got to respect. We've pushed against Jeff Durbin before on the show, but at the same time, I respect that guy. He's like a 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I've seen him fight. It's pretty incredible. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Let's get to it. Okay, so last week, if you remember correctly, I have been kind of doing this thing where I like talking about analogies, and I made an analogy, and the analogy I thought was a really good analogy, but it really fell flat. And the reason why is this. So I thought I was making myself clear, and it obviously was not clear. I got some emails, one in particular. This was a comment, but one in particular said, I hate it when you guys just bash the Hebrew roots movement. There are good people in the Hebrew roots movement. Okay. And my intention last week with my analogy was not to down the Hebrew roots movement. However, thinking back about it, it probably came across that way. So let's try again. I'm trying to think of a good analogy for this. Let's try this analogy again. First of all, I want to say this. There are really good people in the Hebrew roots movement. There are some great people in the Hebrew roots movement. I totally agree with that. I have good friends who are in the Hebrew roots movement. And I know people who are not savvy with a lot of the theological debates or anything like that. They just love the Lord. I know a guy who helped, he's a co-pastor at a Pentecostal church, but goes to a Messianic synagogue on Saturday. And I would consider him Hebrew roots just because of some of the theology that he has. But he really loves the Lord, and he's a blessing. Every time I see him, he just brightens my day because he exudes the fruits of the Spirit. You know what I mean? Joy, peace, patience, kindness, all that. That's who he is. And so I don't want anyone to think that I don't believe that there's really good people. There are some really good people in the Hebrew roots movement. There are. Okay, so with that said, what was I trying to get at? And first I should say, we are going to actually, I'll say that later because we'll talk about it more. So what was I trying to say? And jump in here anytime, Rob, because I would like.
You wanted to read. You were saying you were you sounded kind of harsh about Hebrew roots movement,
Yeah, go ahead.
and you wanted to maybe rephrase something you said. I don't know.
Yeah. But jump in anytime here. Here's I think I'm going to go for a new analogy.
Okay, cool. I like analogies.
Okay. So, back, I don't know how many hundreds of years ago, the Scots, right? They come up with golf. Okay. And
Yeah, it reminds me of that there's that classic Bugs Bunny
right.
where he's golfing with the
kilt on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the Scots come up with golf. They decide to take a stick and hit a ball into a hole a really long ways away. Okay. And who knows why? They were probably drinking
the
scotch.
neighbors are like, phooey, it'll never catch on.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so then years and years later, comes along these two groups, okay? And these two groups are the Hebrew roots movement and the Messianic movement, okay? And they are somewhat distinct in the two movements, but they're both playing golf, right? Now, think about golf back in the 1970s, okay? Now, this is not meant to be a dig on any one group, but back in the 1970s, my dad, in the 80s, I was born in the 80s, so in the mid 80s, my dad would watch golf. I remember this distinctly. These guys were walking around. They had pot bellies, right? They would be smoking a cigarette on the green, okay? They'd have like a hoagie sandwich and a beer in between holes, right? I mean, they were not the model of health, okay? But they were the best golfers in the world, okay? So they had found something that they were not only good at, but that they had elevated. They had elevated this game, okay, to something better. Okay. Now, as time progresses, right, people are building off of what these guys did. Some of these legends who were literally putting with a cigarette hanging out their mouth. And now you get to like today, and even in the early 2000s, things are like innovating more and more. You're getting better equipment. You're getting all these things. So they're building off the past, okay? And now you come into like the 2020s, and you see these guys who are pro golfers, and they are on heavy diets. They're, muscle building diets. They're going to the gym all the time. They are legit athletes, right? And they're doing that because they've realized that if they stay in shape and they eat right and they become world-class athletes, guess what? They can hit the ball even farther and they can do even better and shave strokes off, okay? I see the Torah movement as a whole, and that includes all of it, the Hebrew roots movement, the Messianic movement, whatever else you want to throw in there with it. I see this all as kind of like that progression. You have people come in the 80s, and they've got some really great stuff, okay? But they haven't quite figured all of it out. And now, as we're coming into like the 2020s, there's a younger generation that's building off that first generation, that first, the people who came first. And it's getting better and better. And what I mean by better and better is the theology is becoming locked in. Throughout from 2000 to 2020, there's still no Hebrew roots like official doctrine or faith statement or anything like that. All you have is teachers. That's it. And so I responded to the gentleman who, and I legitimately respect this person who emailed me. And so I emailed him and I said, I understand what you're saying. However, when we tour around, one of the things that we notice with people who call themselves Hebrew roots is that they tend to learn under teachers in the Hebrew roots movement. And inevitably, they're going to adopt those theologies of that teacher. And we're going to talk about this more and more. And so ultimately the question is do the Hebrew roots teachers have good theology? And I would argue that for the most part, I have not found a Hebrew roots teacher that doesn't have some pretty large theological error. And we could talk. Each teacher has their own kind of flavor, and comes with their own theology. Their own little twists. And so I'm not trying to, last week, I wasn't trying to down the Hebrew roots movement or the Messianic movement. What I was trying to show actually is that the younger generation of Torah observant believers, you can call them Christians, you can call them pronomian, you can call them Hebrew roots, you can call them Messianic, you can call them whatever you want. That younger generation is realizing, hey, we got to get education. We have to lock down, foundational theology. Everybody can't just be a Lone Ranger. And because of that, all of a sudden, the generation that's coming up right now in the Torah movement, they're the ones who are going to lock in like legit good theology. And it remains to be seen where that's going to be. And Scott in the chat room says, the internet is today's cigarette. I agree. Yeah. The internet is
yeah, it's true. They say sitting is the new smoking. And what are people sitting? They're on the internet.
Right. But I think the point is that most
just like me right now, I'm sitting, I'm on the
I would say that most, if not, like I can't think of one Hebrew roots teacher that has a legitimate like seminary education. I'm sure they're out there. I'm not trying to say that there aren't them. I just can't think of one right now. And so because of that, you have guys who have, and to what Bobby's saying, what Scott is saying is that, these people are getting their education from the internet, and that inevitably is going to bring problems. But it's something, in defense of the younger Hebrew roots generation, it's something that they've realized. So you have the younger guys in the Hebrew, the younger teachers of the Hebrew roots movement, not as a whole, but some of them are going and getting legit seminary educations, and that's good. They're going to build off of, they're going to figure out, they're going to have to work out some theology within the movement. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I would say, back to Yeshua, I like to think about his words at least once a month. But
I sure
he says, a student's not above his teacher. And that's what I hear you saying, is that, and I think back to the analogy of golf or athletics, I think of Tom Brady. Oh, yeah. I think of the next NFL court. If I'm just going into NFL land, I'm not a huge follower of the NFL. It's just I'm aware of the super athletes, right? If there's going to be another quarterback that will displace Brady's accomplishments, he's going to have to work harder than Brady.
Right.
It's not going to be handed to him on a silver platter. He's going to have to work. He's going to have to learn what Brady did and exceed that. It was the same thing with when I was a teenager. I was a big basketball fan in the early 80s, Dr. J. So I tracked the Lakers, the Celtics, and the 76ers, et cetera. And then this guy from North Carolina went to Chicago, Michael Jordan, and it was no going back. He raised the bar of what an NBA athlete could do. And then it changed the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and the same thing. So if someone like you had maybe a LeBron James, someone who came and was even a contender to displace Jordan, his accomplishments, you're going to have to, same thing. You're going to have to work harder than what they worked. And that's what I see this. That's not just true in athletics. That's true in the classic competition between, like IBM and Apple, like, right. Like the PC versus the Mac world. You see it in, you see an innovator like Elon Musk with the electric vehicle, game changer. Now you have Chevy making a new, electric truck. All these cars now are starting to jump on board. But who set the pace?
Right.
Yeah, someone came along and set the pace. Okay, so if this is true, back to analogies or comparisons, Kal v'chomer. If this is true in the realm of just humanity coming up with inventions and clever ideas or skills, another is, we talked about this the other day, Caleb, is classical music performance, like with a cello or violin, like the classical stringed instruments that have been around. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the basic design of like the best cello that you ever owned or own, when was that actually designed? In the 16th, 17th century, maybe 17th, 18th century. It's been around for what, 300 years, the same pretty much design, right? Same with the violin. And these instruments stay the same. And what happens is every generation, you have a new level of mastery of the best performers, and they raise the bar. And how does that bar get raised? Because they have to learn from all the masters, right? There's no, for example, there's no like the best accomplished violinists or maybe even cellists. Guaranteed, they're going to have a basic repertoire, right? They're going to know some Bach, they're going to know some Mozart, they're going to know some Beethoven, right? And and the fingerings are going to be the same as they were 200 years ago.
I don't know why. What you're saying is perfect, but I don't know why. But it reminds me of a story.
Go. I love it. I love it.
True story.
Oh,
I had a cello teacher, and she was very expensive, and she was rated as one of the third best cellists in Germany.
Did you ever, when you got to her house, you ever say cello?
No, I did not. She was also really good friends with Yo-Yo Ma. And so Yo-Yo Ma she was constantly on the phone with Yo-Yo Ma and, talking to him about his concerts that he was playing, all this kind of stuff. Well,
did you ever ask him, could he walk the dog?
Oh my gosh. Wow. It's the dad jokes are strong with you today. Okay. So Ma comes to Seattle, right? And of course my
That's
teacher.
what we call him for short. Ma.
It's his last name, bro. It's like if I called you Vanhoff.
Are you sure? I thought in Asian cultures, it's like they say the last name first.
I don't know, man.
Okay, so Ma comes over. Go ahead.
Good gracious, dude. What has happened to you? You've melted down in just seconds. Okay,
That's
so
funny.
anyway.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yo-Yo
Okay.
Ma comes to Seattle, the great, right? And my teacher gets tickets. And so we actually went and saw him practice beforehand, which was amazing. I held his Stradivarius. That's not part of the story, but
What?
anyway,
Wait a minute.
yeah. So I know, pretty awesome, isn't it?
What did he say? Hey, Caleb, will you hold this for a second?
I said, "Can I touch your cello?" He said, "Here, hold it while I sign this." I said, "Okay."
It's like probably insured for what, $5 million?
Yeah, it's priceless, but I think the Stradley is only worth 1.5. He left it.
Okay.
Totally different story, but he left it in the back of a cab in New York on accident. Not the point. Okay, we're getting way off track here. So we're watching during the first half, right? And I think to myself, I have fairly decent pitch. And when I say that, I'm not trying to brag, but it really bothers me when something is just a hair out of tune. And a lot of the times I'll hear it and other people won't. And I think to myself, Yo-Yo Ma's out of tune. He's off. He's off just a hair. So at the intermission, I say to my teacher, Yo-Yo Ma, he was playing a little flat, wasn't he? You know what she said to me? She said, "Yes, but he plays out of tune so well." It's the truth, right? I mean, those who have, and the reason that Yo-Yo Ma can get away with that, with being just a hair flat, is because he has practiced and devoted his life to being the best ever, right? And so even when he might have a mistake, or even when he might have just be a little off, it doesn't matter because he's the best. Anyway, okay. We have to address the chapter.
Okay, so real quick, let me finish that. Thank you for that.
Please.
Sorry
Yes,
for the
go.
funny, silly jokes. My point is this, is that whatever the domain, the domain where there's high competency, right? Where there's skill and competency, you have what emerge over time are the best practices. And the best practices by those who are devoted to that field predict excellent results. In other words, the results are predictable and have excellent quality.
Right.
And so what happens, you have a new person come into the domain, and that's what happens. One last story, and then I'll hand it back.
Yep.
I watched this, my wife and I watched this documentary that talked about the divers that in Thailand, when there was the flood and there was the little kids soccer team was trapped. Man, I was brought to tears. It's so insane what the problem was and how they solved it. But the best Navy SEALs in the world did not know how to get to those kids. They had like 3 dudes who were amateur cave divers. They did it just because they loved it, and they had done it for decades. Yeah. They had to call those guys, and those guys trained the Navy SEALs. They say, this is what you have to do. And they orchestrated this whole thing. It took a battle with the Thai government, because the Thai government's like, why should we trust you guys? And the SEALs are like, look, these guys know their deal. And they had developed the skill out of sheer love. But that sheer love.
Shouldn't all believers be like that?
Well, yeah, they had never imagined that they would be in a situation like this. But they, in a way, God had allowed them to pursue and excel at this beyond the level of a Navy SEAL.
Right.
For the love of it, just for the love of the adventure. And then they get called upon, and the world is watching, and they save every single one of those kids. And it's just another example of like, okay, so
you know what that reminds me of?
Okay, another story. Let's hear.
That reminds me of the Mandalorian, right? I forget what it's like a cosplay troop or whatever. Yeah, but
Baby Yoda, man.
There's a bunch of guys and ladies who dress up like stormtroopers, right? And it's called like the 148th or something. And in the Mandalorian, they needed a bunch of stormtroopers, and so they didn't know where they were going to get all the extras, and so they called up this troop. And the directors are like, it was perfect because we didn't have to tell them what to do. They all moved just like the stormtroopers. They knew exactly how to stand, and we didn't have to give them any direction. Okay, well let's address the chat room.
Okay, the point is this: the Bible's been around for longer than all these other domains where there's high competency required.
Right,
and you need teachers. Like if I want to learn to climb Mount Everest, if my goal is to climb Mount Everest, I need to go train with people who've actually done that. I need to get the instruction and training by people who have actually done it, not someone who just has a book with pictures in it and is telling me they know what to do.
Right.
And what I see in the Bible world are too many people who they seem to be excited about the Word of God, but they're running with a message before they themselves really own the message themselves. And so, it's a fault of all humans. It's easy for us to presume we know something that we don't know. And then there's also a bad habit in humans to, if they don't know something, to like pretend we do because we don't want to say, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, we're talking basic level integrity stuff, but some of it is just people haven't been exposed to good teachers. Like in the 90s, dude, it was like Lou White's book, and it was who's the Wootons?
Yeah.
I mean, those were the books that the people I looked up to.
Right.
So I was in my mid-20s. I was looking up to people who were like, they were in their 30s and 40s. They were way accomplished and way ahead of me in life. I'm looking to them as elders, and that's their diet. Their diet was Israel, who is Israel, fossilized customs, Eddie Chumney books. And that was their, no one knew Hebrew, but yet they had their message.
We got it. We got to stop, man. The chat room is leaving us behind here. Okay. Let's address some of the stuff in the chat room, and then we'll keep talking about this. Bobby says, if only there was an online institute for Torah resource. Yeah, that's right. So if you want some education, biblical education, go to TorahResource.com, hover over Institute. You can find all the information There, okay. Then we have Clayton says, most of the guys I followed and learned from had degrees in education, but now I realize they were way off of their theology. Okay, I completely agree. I'm not saying that people with degrees are going to be right all the time.
That doesn't solve the problem.
That's not going to solve the
discipleship to Yeshua. This solves the problem.
However, here's the difference. You got guys with degrees, okay? At least they know their languages. They can parse, a word in Hebrew. Then you got guys who purport to have studied Hebrew for 25 years in the Hebrew Roots movement who legitimately have never taken a formal Hebrew class and don't know what in the world they're talking about.
Yeah, that's like your Lou White kind of thing. But but on the flip side, you have
go ahead.
Your Bart Ehrman guys who are experts in the language. So there's multiple skills that need to be developed together. That's the point. It's not just Bible language competency. It's not just a desire to give your life and to serve Yeshua's flock.
Brandon is right in the chat room. He says the Holy Spirit is a part of that. Right, exactly. Bart Ehrman obviously doesn't have the Holy Spirit because he denies Christ. Yet at the same time, you got people who accept Christ. So the Holy Spirit obviously plays into this. Question for both of you. Do you think part of the issue is being taught what to think biblically versus how to think biblically? Yeah, I think that's part of it. Clayton says...
Say that again. Again.
Do you think that part of the issue is being taught what to think biblically versus how to think biblically? That's possible, but here's the thing. Within the Hebrew Roots movement, you got guys who say that they know how to think biblically, and they're just not going to accept what they've been, what's been being taught. And so they deny, because they don't actually know how to think biblically, they deny things that are central doctrines, like the deity of Christ, the Trinity, stuff like this. So,
well, they think they're thinking biblically.
Of course they do.
Like I've had countless people say the word Trinity is not in the Bible, so it's not in my vocabulary, kind of thing.
So Carl brings up a really interesting point here. Sorry, keep going. You weren't finished.
No, that's it.
I got so many things going on. Carl, where was it? Carl brings up a really good point. He says, I think what Caleb is referring to is there isn't a lot of places for us to learn from. So these guys are inventing stuff. No scholarship. So
there's a market.
I understand what you're saying. However, I think that one of the things that I've learned in my experience at seminary is this. You get out of it what you put into it. People who go in attempting to change everybody's mind on the idea that Christians should be keeping the Sabbath or that, the festivals should still be kept today. Why would you do that? There are really good seminaries, Christian, Baptist, seminaries, not even Baptist. There's just great seminaries all around the United States and the world that teach things like biblical languages, biblical theology, Old Testament. Dude, at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, my intro to the Old Testament 1 and 2 class was dynamite. I learned so much from that class. I took it because I thought, what am I going to, this will be an easy class. I'm going to have a child while this class is going on. So I'll take this class because it'll just be a breeze. It was not a breeze. It was intense and it was fun and I learned a lot. So there are places to learn out there. It's just whether or not you're humble enough to say there are some things I'm going to disagree with, but I can still learn from these people. Okay. I'm against getting degrees and being educated, but I'm not against getting okay. Sorry. John McKee has a degree. He does. And actually, McKee's degree, even though I disagree with him on some doctrines, McKee's degree shines forth in the way that he writes. He does his research. Okay. Could you guys talk about using Torah in communities of believers? Yeah, the Torah should be the foundation of our communities. Everything goes back to the Torah, in my opinion. Okay, hang on. Oh, Carl once again asks, Jeff Benner. I got the same question yesterday. Jeff Benner. Jeff Benner says that he has 25 years of Hebrew experience. He's very into word pictures. I could be totally wrong.
Stay away from it.
Yeah, stay away from it. I could be completely wrong, but I have looked and looked and looked and looked to see where Mr. Benner got any kind of Hebrew education, and I have not been able to find it. I've sent an email to him asking where he learned Hebrew, and I have not. He
basically followed the logic of what Lou White has been teaching all along, starting at least in the 90s, maybe before that. Lou White could have done it earlier. Is the idea that you take each letter, makes it like a little caveman cartoon picture, and then you interpret that, and that has those are units of meaning, and that's invention. That's human invention. That's not how anybody in the Bible taught.
Right.
So stay away from that. Unless, if you're entertained by it, and you want to stick with it, you're wasting your life. You're wasting your life.
Why don't you tell us how you really
go actually
feel?
learn Hebrew, and stay away from the fanciful, stuff like that.
Hey, listen, I've never met Mr. Benner. He might, I'm sure, so he's talked about highly by a lot of people. I'm sure that he's a very nice person. He probably loves the Lord with all of his heart, and that's why he, puts out the stuff that he's putting out. However,
no, wait a minute. That's why he's lying to people.
I don't think he thinks that. He thinks that in his opinion, he's putting out. Yeah, but
that's between. So do you think, how long does God let people live in a lie? If they really love him? Yeah, I don't know about that.
All I'm saying
to me, there's no excuse by now. The Messianic movement, whatever it is way too far developed to have people still teaching Hebrew word pictures.
I agree.
It's that was like the 80s and 90s called, and the whole. It's like this. It's like, everybody advanced to real violins and are playing symphonies, and you've got people still like plucking around on a plastic, Kmart violin, telling people this is how to make the music. Yeah,
I mean, people are just throwing out names from the Hebrew roots movement now. Stay away. Ultimately there's maybe a person or two that names of the Hebrew roots teachers that could be put out there where I'd say, yeah, they got some good things to say. But for the most part, I think that I think what you just said exemplifies how I think of the Hebrew roots teachers, at least the old guard. And what I mean by that are those who have been around for some time in teaching, and that is the 90s called. They want their theology back. It's my camera.
I've encountered this so many times over the years. That people who have some sort of conviction about how to read Hebrew when they don't know Hebrew. And I'm dealing with them, and I have a degree in Hebrew. I understand Hebrew. I'm not perfect. I'm not fluent, but I can hold my own. And I'm trying to tell somebody, look, you need to learn. And they're eschewing that advice. They're eschewing that wisdom. And I'm like, look, in 5 years will have gone by, and you're going to be in the same place. You're still going to be in the little kiddie pool splashing around. When if you adopt a plan to I'm going to climb that mountain, in 5 years you could be like you could have excellent Hebrew skills, and you, in acquiring those skills, you would clean up a lot of this cloudy nonsense thinking that you're abiding in. And 5 years go by, and that's what I said is true. They're still in this weird space, and it's like, you know what? I can't care about your development more than you care about your own development. And those are I'm not going to help you. There is a path that you need to take if you're going to presume to be a Bible teacher. That there's no time for these speculative, oh, the earth is flat. Oh, the Hebrew word pictures. Oh, the canon is, they've lied to you. Oh, all this stuff that grips people and they take it and run with it. There's no time for that anymore. You have to be serious. And it's what John the Baptist said, the axe is at the root of the tree. Bear fruit, meat of repentance, or you're getting chopped off and thrown into the fire. That's where we're at. Because the call is getting more and more sharp and intense, and the people who've been lollygagging around are going to be left behind because they never latched onto truth. They were all about the ears. What's tickling my ears?
Okay. It's a good conversation, but we only got 15 minutes left, and I want to get to Carl's question. So this is going to bring forth a lot of, sorry about the camera issues. My camera overheated.
Yeah, I like the chops there.
What do you mean?
I can see why Yo-Yo Ma said, "Here, hold my $1.5 million cello." Like, you look like you're not going to let anything happen to that thing.
All right, here we go. This is from Carl in the chat room, and so okay, I edited down some of the pauses and whatnot. The phone message was originally 3.5 minutes, and that's great. I got it down to 1 minute and 44 seconds. It's longer than we would normally play. However, Carl kind of hashes out some of his background, but also then into multiple points, and it's a little bit soft. So you're going to have to listen.
My name's Carl Matthias. Just a little background. I'm going to be 63 years old. I've had a couple questions about Ezekiel. Sometimes my wording is not understandable sometimes, so excuse me. Little background, almost 30 years of law enforcement. Also was a independent Baptist preacher. Bible college, didn't graduate from seminary, went 2 years of seminary for man did. Wanting to know your opinion. The question is, wanting to know your opinion on Joe Good. Been studying under him about his temple course. South Carolina, which I lived, we were involved in the Messianic Judaism Fellowship and got into the Noahide laws, oral Torah, listened to a bunch of stuff that your dad has done. And
hang on just a sec. So we've already done shows on the Noahide laws. However, for those who might be new to this program, it needs to be understood. The Noahide laws were not, they were not a theology that was given like, oh, here are 7 laws for the Gentiles. It came from the Jews saying, we have 613 laws, which is rabbinic, by the way. That's not legit. But anyway, we have 613 laws. The Gentiles only have 7, and they can't even keep 7. It was a down on the Gentiles. It was It was not like a good thing for the Gentiles. So
and before that, it was the Torah is only for Israel, not for the whole world.
Right. And so the fact that,
and then it was like, okay, then we'll tell you the details of that.
The fact that you got people in the Hebrew roots movement, well, I would say the Messianic movement, actually, within the Messianic movement, trying to push the Noahide laws for the Gentiles, either shows ignorance or shows that they really don't like the Gentiles. One of the two. Okay,
yeah, they've adopted a Talmudic worldview, thinking that's going to help the gospel.
Okay,
you're really helping a lot there.
Here we go. Let's keep going with Carl's. Thank you. Let's keep going with Carl's voice message.
Listen to a bunch of stuff that your dad has done, and complete agreement. I saw myself slipping into that trap, but the fellowship that was involved in position, I don't think the fellowship that was with does, where they think that I was just specifically dealing with the Mishnah, because I've listened to a lot. And again, I'm not against oral Torah, but I am against oral Torah when it's put at the same level as the scriptures.
Okay, I think first of all, I think that we have a couple of things. Our stream keeps going in and out, so we might play the last part of that for those who missed it. But ultimately, the question is, Joe Good. What is the opinion on Joe Good? for those who don't, and look, we have new listeners who are, I would say, they're not part of the Torah movement at all. They're Christians. They're mainstream Christians, and so some of these names, people are probably going, I don't know who in the world these people are, and that's fine. You're probably better off that way. Joe Good is a teacher. He came from Worldwide Church of God. A lot of people don't know that. He came from Worldwide Church of God, and he came into the Hebrew Roots movement in the 80s and really helped kind of bolster the Hebrew Roots movement. He was really big into the temple and into understanding the temple and those kind of things. He has since partnered with Rico Cortez, and Rico Cortez and him travel around, and Good does a whole course on just that, the temple. And he uses a lot of like the Mishnah and I don't know if he uses the Talmud. I've never taken the course. Obviously, I would never do that. And the reason why is because if you want to, just walk down the road for just a second, there is a great 2.5-hour debate online on YouTube. You can find it. It's between James White and Michael Brown together fighting against Anthony Buzzard and Joe Good on whether or not Yeshua is divine. So the deity of Christ. Joe Good says, no, he's not divine. At that point, that's a hard stop for me. Any teacher who says that Yeshua is not divine, he is not Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in the flesh, hard pass. I'm not going to listen to that unless we're talking about, now there are exceptions to this, of course. There are unbelieving scholars that do have some good things to say in specific areas. Okay, so for instance, I've found some interesting historical facts from Mark Nanos, who is not a believer. He is a Reformed Jew, and he is a Paul scholar. And so he's written on Romans, and he's brought up some very interesting points about the historical background of the book of Romans. So those kind of things. I've gleaned from others who are not necessarily believers. However, if you got guys who, especially in the quote-unquote Hebrew Roots movement, that are preaching against the deity of Christ, I really don't understand why I would be listening to those people. A perfect example of this would be Nehemiah Gordon. I'm not sure why anyone would listen to Nehemiah Gordon. Doesn't make any sense. But he also, so our friend Carl here, he also says that, the fact is that Itzhak Shapira denies the Trinity. He calls himself now Dr. Rabbi Itzhak Shapira. I've looked and looked. I can't find anywhere where he got his degree. I think it was an honorary doctorate.
That guy makes me laugh. I wrote a review of his kosher pig book, but I just looked in the articles on our website and I don't see it, so I'm not sure where it is. But
we'll get it up there. He bases everything very heavily on Kabbalah, and so he believes
on a very limited understanding of Kabbalah too. He's not a trained. He's a rabbi. Another guy. He reminds me of like a Jeff Benner. Like he goes and tries to learn something in one domain and then, tries to sell something.
Yeah. Well,
he's selling an idea that is a distortion of the word of God, plain and simple. And it's sad that there are leadership in communities that allow him a platform. I think that's shameful.
It is shameful.
To allow him a platform it's shocking. Derelict. It's neglect. It shows that people don't know their theology. They don't know what he's teaching. It's because they're open to the tickling of ears.
Well,
they haven't learned to say no. You have to learn to say no.
Okay, we got to be careful though, and here's the reason why: is because someone like Carl in the chat room, right? He's going to this Messianic Jewish synagogue.
Yeah, it's not his fault. I'm not saying
he's learning all this new stuff. He's probably super pumped about it, right? And then what happens? These people bring in Itzhak Shapira. They bring in a class from Itzhak Shapira. And
that's not shepherding.
Yeah, it's not.
That's not Carl's problem. I mean,
Right.
it ultimately becomes something Carl has to deal with. Yes, but that's on the shepherds. The shepherds are supposed to protect.
Right.
The shepherds have to make sure the food is good. Like if you have an animal, even, do you make sure that you feed your animal healthy food? Right. I mean, if you do that for your animal, I mean, we what do we put in our bodies? Do we watch what we put in our bodies? And how much more are the shepherds supposed to fight and protect so that the food for the flock is fresh and nourishing and good?
So, I mean, you have Joe Good denies the deity of Christ. Okay. You have Itzhak Shapira, who denies the Trinity, believes in Kabbalah, and is just totally messed up on all sorts of stuff. By the way, he says that Metatron is Yeshua, which is legitimate heresy. That is heresy.
Yeah, it's just the guy should not be listened to at all. That's just
and then the last name that came up was Rico Cortez. And here's the thing. Once again, Rico Cortez denies the deity or denies the Trinity. He says the Trinity is not, and if you push him hard enough, somebody needs to ask Rico if Yeshua is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in the flesh, besides me, because I did, but somebody else needs to ask Rico if Yeshua is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in the flesh. I'm gonna bet you get a whole lot of dancing around that question. The fact is that you got, the problem is you got people who are giving up on foundational doctrines of our faith. And these people are the teachers of the Hebrew Roots movement. Now, once again, we have a younger generation that's coming up, and I think that they are, they're trying to tote the line of the foundational issues. And so we'll have to see. We will have to see what happens in that. And the chat room has noticed now that I said the word heretic. No, I don't. I didn't say heretic. I didn't say heretic. I said heresy. I said that Itzhak Shapira teaches that Yeshua is Metatron, and that is heresy. That is heresy. Because Metatron, if you look into the rabbinical writings
he's a Decepticon.
Yeah. For those who don't know, and I know that we're in some weird territory here, but within the Jewish mystical writings, Enoch is elevated to the role of angel, and then he becomes the scribe angel, and then he is elevated to, and this is not a joke, he is elevated to the degree of lesser Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. That's what he's called, lesser Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So, and Enoch has a beginning. He is a created being. And what Itzhak Shapira and others say is that Yeshua is Metatron. If you don't understand that there is a major problem with that, then please go back and read, John, the Gospel of John, or Colossians, or Romans, or, I mean, it's pretty shocking. So, I mean, ultimately, here's the thing. I think one of the things that those who are coming into the Torah movement need to understand is there are some really great things in the Torah movement. There are. There is a focus on the covenants of God. There's a focus on the Torah, and that is the foundation of the apostolic scriptures. It's the foundation of a lot of the biblical texts. Right? Is the Torah. It goes back to the Torah. So learning about the Torah and diving into the Torah is a wonderful thing. There's so much that can be gleaned there. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that. But if you don't have a solid handle on the foundational elements of our faith, which are the deity of Christ, the doctrine of the Trinity, the 66 book canon, okay? Even the 5 solas. If you don't have a good handle on these, just stop. Just stop right now, take a breath, and read, and just keep reading the Bible. You don't need to go to these teachers like Joe Good and Rico Cortez and these guys who are teaching. Do they have good things to say? I'm sure that they have some good things to say. But if they're going to be putting strychnine in the water that they're serving to everybody, it's not going to matter how much water's in there. The strychnine is gonna take over. And that's what these guys are doing.
Okay, I found the link. I'm putting 2 links into.
Oh, there, it's already in there, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Michael wrote above, an unrecognizable Messiah, a critical review of Yitzhak Shapira's The Return of the Kosher Pig. And we will have, thank you. We will have Mike post that in the articles section as well.
I think it's in there. I just didn't know where to find it. Anyway, cool.
So listen to what Carl says. This is what Carl says. I spoke to Rico for about an hour, justifying Joe Good's position. Rico said Yeshua is divine, but not God. Yeshua is divine, but not God. This is the teacher that people are listening to?
He knows better, I guess. Rico knows better than
that right Bible. There, my friends, is called strychnine.
Who are they trying to please?
I don't know, man. I don't want to guess on motives. I'm gonna assume that people's motives are good, but I think that right there is
why do you assume the motive's good?
Well,
is that I mean at some point when how long are you going to just assume? I mean, because this is a good question. You know, it says in the Bible, it says God says, "Vengeance is mine; I will repay." And so, from that view, it's like, okay, you know what, free speech and all that. But when you call it strychnine, that strychnine kills, and you have to fight to protect and preserve what is untainted, right? Yeah.
Joshua, again, so multiple witnesses.
The wolf
here.
in sheep's clothing. Yeshua says a wolf in sheep's clothing. Why is the wolf in sheep's clothing? It's not good intention. It's good intention for the wolf's agenda. It's in alignment with the wolf's agenda, but it's not good in the world of sheep. The people who really love the sheep care about the health of the sheep. And those who care about the health of the sheep are going to research and learn what makes a sheep healthy and what keeps a sheep healthy and protected. That's that simple. And the people who are feeding strychnine to sheep are hirelings or wolves in sheep clothing. They don't really care about the flock, but they're profiting off the flock.
Yeah.
Do you care about Yeshua? Do you care about his flock? That's the question. If so, you're going to, and you feel called to defend the word of God, then you're going to do that for that purpose, out of that love of Yeshua. If you see, I'm going to go make some money in the Messianic realm. I'm going to publish books on Hebrew word pictures, or I'm going to mix up some teaching of Kabbalah, or I'm going to add some of these books that were kicked out of the Bible, but they really belong in, and I'm going to sell and make a name for myself. Those people are going to hell. That's what it is. Those are the people that Yeshua says, get out of here. You have no inheritance with me. I never knew you. In fact, you caused damage to my people because you were all absorbed with your own fleshy agenda, and you never even learned anything about me. That's how I feel about these people.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not positive, but I think we just had the Hoff goes off. Yeah, and the chat room is affirming the Hoff goes off. So I hope this is appropriate. Here we go.
Value Sensei. The Hoff goes off. The Hoff goes off. The Hoff goes off.
Yeah. Rob is in spicy mode again.
from dad jokes to bad dad jokes
to the Hoff goes off. Okay. For all of our new subscribers, by the way, we just hit 7,800 subscribers yesterday.
Hopefully one of those is Shapira. And
for
some of these
for those who are new to the show, what you just heard was you got to go way back. I think that's season 1 or 2 when we created the Hoff goes off for situations just like that when Rob Vanhoff gets heated under the collar. All right, hey man, I always like a show where the Hoff goes off, so I think we're gonna stop right there because you know what? Stop while you're ahead. Yeah, if you have things to say about that, if you want to write in, I mean, the stories in the chat room of people talking to Rico Cortez now about the deity of Christ abound. So that's there you go.
People should just call him, keep calling him and asking him.
Well, I think it's an established fact at this point. I've talked to him. Other people in the chat room obviously have. So
on the Joe Good side, just one more comment. There's all sorts of. There's precedence to that. Like Alfred Edersheim in the late 1800s was a Jewish believer in Jesus. He wrote in English the temple and its services, right? The life and times of Jesus the Messiah. And he went and he thought, wow, all this stuff is available in English now, right? All this stuff like the works of Philo and Josephus had been translated into English. Not so much rabbinic stuff yet. By the 1800s, not as accessible in terms of, Neusner in the 70s and the 80s was the real force, although some rabbinic stuff had been translated into English earlier in the 20th century. But for Edersheim, it was like, you know what? The New Testament just assumes stuff about the temple, right? That it doesn't give us details. So it's like, I want to read through Philo. I want to read through Josephus and maybe even into the later rabbinic stuff. So which has a general soundness when it comes to method. Okay, I'm going to look at first century sources. So I'm going to look at Philo and Josephus, right? And then I'll look at post-destruction sources, like, early rabbinic stuff, the Mishnah, like Carl said, the Tosefta. But those are getting later now, 3rd, 4th, 5th century AD. But the idea is like, I'm going to see what I can learn about the temple from these other sources and then kind of cut and paste and take all these little pieces and then see if I could create a picture. And then I'm going to call that picture the background for the Gospels. And then I'm going to take my little cut and paste Jesus and I'm going to walk him around the world that I created by referring to these other writings. And in general, that seems like a rational approach. And it is rational. There is a general soundness. However, what has happened in the last 100 years, we've had a lot of new information come, particularly the Dead Sea Scrolls. We've had numerous excavations of synagogues, Temple Mount, and all this kind of stuff that has reshaped our understanding from an archaeological perspective, not from a sound reference to these texts. And additionally, we've learned that texts have agendas. We start to learn, Josephus has an agenda. The rabbis have an agenda. Philo has an agenda. And so we learn that agenda matters, but we also learn that time and space. Looking at the Babylonian Talmud, most of the rabbis cited in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, never lived in Israel. They never saw a temple, but yet they're talking about it as if they have.
Right.
But so if I take their conversation from 5th, 6th century Mesopotamia, and they're talking about the length of this temple thing and this other thing, and it's like, oh, that must be valid? No. So what we've learned is that general method, while chronology is good, looking at sources carefully is good, we have to allow we have to cross-examine each witness in a way and qualify the voice. And that's super important.
And what had happened early, and this happened even in the 20th century, unqualified cherry picking from the rabbinic literature to try to adorn the words of Yeshua as if somehow he's just now a Talmudic sage. Like he's on the same page as all the rabbis, you know? And it's like, no, he was rejected. He was rejected. And there's a difference. There's a difference between Talmudic worldview and the worldview presumed by the Gospels. And if you conflate those, you conflate it to your own peril, your own danger. The pure word of God, the Gospels, what we have is the apostolic writings and the Tanakh together. That's it. That's your canon. That's the Holy Spirit. If you start bringing in these other things and treating them inappropriately, that's a different spirit. You have to, and this is back to the violin, the football, the golf, the competency. If I'm going to start dealing in this precise stuff, it's like brain surgery in some ways, and I'm selling the product of my labor as food for believers or people interested in the Bible. Ooh, there's a reason why James says, don't be quick to be called a teacher.
Right. All right. We got to stop there. It's been fun. It's been real. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can do so. 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205.